Je vais répéter en français. Alors, pour la traduction, nous avons la traduction en 4 langues, sauf que pour l'italien, il faut cliquer où c'est marqué allemand, et pour l'arabe, il faut cliquer où c'est marqué coréen, malheureusement. Voilà. Après 10 secondes, à partir de ce moment, Alessandra peut commencer.
Buongiorno a tutti. Grazie.
Good morning to you all. Thank you for being here. I'm very happy and I'm honored for having had the possibility of organizing this event together with my colleague, the Honorable Herzberger-Fofana. I would like to thank you all for being here today so that we can speak together about such an important topic from the cultural, ethical, moral, human, and political standpoint. Quite often in EU countries, people mostly believe that the enormous issue of female genital mutilation does not affect us, that this is something that's far removed from us, something that pertains mostly to Africa and Asia, and does not pertain to Europe. However, data on this point are quite eloquent. In 2020, it was estimated that in Europe, about 600,000 women and girls have to coexist and have to live with the consequences of this practice, and that about 180,000 risk being subjected to this practice in the future. Female genital mutilation is widespread violence all over the world, and there are about 68 million girls who globally risk being subjected to this practice by 2030, a humongous number. The struggle against this practice is long and complicated, and we must be very careful not to become convinced that the battle against female genital mutilation might be won only with the law. Female genital mutilation, as a matter of fact, is enshrined in international treaties and recognized as a violation of human rights. In Europe, most nations have specific laws that forbid this globally. And if we take into account the 92 countries where mutilation is still practiced, 55% of them have laws that in theory forbid this. Quite often, they are the same women belonging to migrant communities that ask to be subjected to this practice in their adult life, because mutilation is seen as a passage of rite, as ritual that is necessary in their culture, related to aesthetic purity and beauty. Therefore, this issue is a lot more profound. It is deeply rooted in society and culture, a global society and culture, but especially a society and culture that go against human rights and also gender equality. Let us not make the mistake of being able to solve a problem that pertains to all nations with individualistic attitudes and just national actions. Deeply rooted problems that are so rooted in culture require global solutions and also require coordination, cooperation, and respect. Investments are needed, targeted investments, to make sure that this battle becomes an absolute priority for all nations. And it can be an important element in the fight for gender equality. Investments are necessary with a coordinated collection of data for the education of young people and adults that is able to respond to this violation of human rights and to establish a global advocacy network that might change this practice, which is all too rooted and that requires a targeted action aimed at individual communities. The reason is to understand the reasons why second and third generations of women decide to be subjected to this practice, but and not just talking with Western women who are considered free to choose, and with the women who share values that are considered to be inferior. We have to think about the dynamics of the relations between the different cultures and the effective integration of migrants. It is necessary to break the mold of power in the relationship between men and women that are found in all countries and in all communities in different forms. reiterating the equality between genders. Today, the transport of coordination is increasingly accessible, and global advocacy networks, they unite different and remote realities that propose innovative solutions are becoming increasingly important. I would like to mention the example of the 5 girls from Kenya who in 2019 were the finalists of the Sakharov Award for freedom of thought. And they wanted to emphasize the aim of their work, restoring hope for hopeless girls. They established a smartphone app. They produced this to help girls who were victims of genital mutilation. With this app, the girls can look for help, look for specialized facilities, reporting this crime to the authorities. And they have presented this app in the United States and Europe, bringing together 3 elements in the battle against female genital mutilations, such as passion, innovation, and talent. To win this battle, we need an international union, and it is necessary to have a united Europe, once again, that sets an example so that we can achieve gender equality. I believe the European nations can pursue battles that are founded on those values that are at the foundation of our union, as reported in Article 2 of the Treaty of the European Union, that refers to a society that's characterized by pluralism, by non-discrimination, tolerance, justice, solidarity, and gender equality. Let us make sure that these are not just empty words and they become facts, facts that are able to then bring forward a culture of parity and human rights that allows men and women to be considered equal and free. Thank you. Sandra, I would like to give the floor to the Honorable Herzberger-Fofana. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, I could not hear the French translation. The connection was very bad, but we can hear you. Yes, indeed, we can. We can hear you. I'm very sorry because I could not follow my colleague, but the French translation was provided. But regarding female genital mutilation, it is a universal problem that affects both African countries and Europe, violating the rights of women to reproductive health and their physical integrity. In the European Union, more than 180,000 women have been subjected to this mutilation, and most European countries have introduced laws that involve every individual that damages another person and punishes anyone who does that, as is the case with genital mutilation. But we have to inform the population, underlining the dangers for the health of the victim. So it is important to inform, because quite often we're not informed enough of the European laws that basically sentence these practices. In Africa, there are social norms and religious conditions that are wrong, which are the foundation of these practices, and that over time have been assimilated to the Muslim religion. However, in the Bible and the Quran, no sacred text states in writing that genital mutilation must be practiced. So no religion out there, really, despite the different beliefs and folk beliefs, really promotes genital mutilation. And these beliefs are a hinder to the eradication of female genital mutilation. Therefore, we must fight against this taboo to change the situation at European level. So we have to inform, we have to explain to people what the damages and the consequences are of female genital mutilation. There are organizations such as your project that contribute to providing appropriate information to girls and women, restoring a healthy culture so that we can work together in order to eradicate all over the world female genital mutilation by 2030 in every layer of society. The United States have launched an international day to draw people's attention on this problem of female genital mutilation, to raise awareness on regarding this violence against women and girls, which is a dire violation, a dire form of injustice. And therefore, this prevents any form of autonomy for girls and women. Unfortunately, we have trouble listening because we can also hear the Arabic translation on the channel. At the level of the European Parliament, a common strategy has been required in order to put female genital mutilation, put an end to female genital mutilation. And the Association of African Women for Research and Development that I've been interested in has taken part in debates on this very topic within European institutions. Mostly, we have to give greater visibility to this issue. Today, 20 years later, as a member of the European Parliament, I can acknowledge major progress that has been made that has basically curbed the female genital mutilation in many places, and the excellent work carried out by many organizations such as No Peace Without Justice, Women Save La Palabre, and your project also. And they are working actively in order to engage people, the people who are affected by this practice, women, with the cooperation of the European. Thank NGOs for their work that have worked at European level, on a European scale, in this fight against FGMs, which, as I mentioned earlier, are an act of violence against the social fulfillment of women. February 12th, 2020, at the European Parliament, we voted. Different EU representatives have been working in a practical way with affected communities and have worked with NGOs. And they have also launched a petition to ask for support from Europe to ensure a lasting, effective action. This, for instance, is your project, which at the EU level has allowed men and women to exchange opinions on this topic and fight together against female genital mutilation. And this, therefore, implies a more powerful role for every player at every level. And quite often, we base ourselves on personal experiences. Thank you for having given me the floor and having given me the opportunity to speak to you and describe to you very briefly the situation of female genital mutilation in the EU. Thank you so much for your comments. And in this way, we can launch the panel that we will kick off quite soon. As a matter of fact, female genital mutilations, we have always considered this as something that is alien to Europe, and instead it is present in Europe pervasively. This is the purpose of the Before project that we present today, for which we present the conclusions. And basically, its purpose was to study how we can fight, basically, and eradicate this dismal practice. And we have considered 3 countries in particular in this project in order to assess the respective situations in France, Belgium, and Italy. And therefore, without further ado, I would like to kick off this panel presenting to you Nurse Women Safe, Pierre Foldès and Frédéric Mas, about the situation of female genital mutilation in France and their experience of Women Safe. They could not be here with us, and they have sent us, oh, Pierre is there, so I would like to say hi to him. Pierre is there actually, thank you. But we will show this video, however, right? So there we go. And please, I would like to ask, please, to show this video.
Bonjour, nous sommes l'Institut en santé génétique devenu l'Institut
Good
Moretti.
morning. This is the Genetic Health Institute Women's Safe. We deal with genital female mutilations. We've been dealing with the project before, a European project, to improve the reactions of European countries with respect to the counterparts. Italy started very late its struggle. There was a convention initially, and then the Istanbul Convention, the Maputo Protocol, that is the 3 institutional protocols that were sensitizing Europe. Now, at that time, we could not measure really engage the extension of the issue. We meant to check for prevalence. We wanted to see how many cases existed and how many women were running the risk of being mutilated, because there was no common policy within the European Union with measures like this that were adopted. So that was the first problem. Then we had 2 steps, or 2 levels rather. In the first place, prevention, because all of these countries entail different answers. Prevention entails a change in social rules with respect to this huge issue and problem. Then there is this big problem with respect to social norms, because this is stepping into the private sphere. And whenever we have a violation of the rights of the person, this thing becomes highly sensitive. The third level has got to do with protection, safeguard, a series of strategies to support the victims, the women victims. France was one of the very first countries to criminalize the aspect, and there was a lawyer who specialized in this field, and she won many battles ever since the 80s. And whenever it is the case of minors less than 15 years, the authors are usually the co-ascendants, the legitimate ones, the parents. Then the penal codes in France changed thanks to the obligation to report the cases. So many professionals, physicians who were hiding behind the professional secrecy not to report the cases now have the mandatory obligations of reporting it, so as to allow for the green light of procedures, but also to allow us to acknowledge the number of real cases. In France, we have a law with respect to the protection of children. And in France, we also have a very special system, that is to say, protection maternal and child centers. And they are very active, any such maternal child centers. It's important now to talk about prevalence, though, because we don't have administrative policies with this respect. There is a study by the Health Ministry that was conducted and which assessed some 65,000 numbers of mutilated women in France. In 2019, we had the National Eradication Plan, which allows to put together and to bring together all of the stakeholders and the actors to assess and gauge the spread of the phenomenon and collaborate with other countries. Now, with respect to prevention, it is mostly the criminalization that really made a big change and allowed a big change in countries, but most of all in France, the setting up some national procedures of information and training of all of the operators working on the ground at the social and health level. So now we have some national training plans for migrants, which is very important. And it was very important to include mutilations in national plans whereby we witnessed the violence against women, which is what allowed us to take huge steps forward. Then we have other programs to inform migrants. That was a first step, because many of them are migrants, but they were neither trained nor informed. So there was another huge program involving migrants with respect to the training, not only of professionals, the ones who are informed about the issue and the problem, and also because this is what allowed us to fight globally this phenomenon. Then we also set up some multidisciplinary units, and we took charge of the issues and problems of the mutilation suffered, so as to set up a multidisciplinary approach, including also restoring and repairing surgery, which will be dealt with in a few moments. But the important thing was to have this disciplinary approach. The first things had to do with the change in the asylum seeking rights in France, because in order to protect parents with respect and victims that were suffering any such mutilations. But the situation is very complex. We have a platform. We have to train deeply and completely all of the experts and professionals involved in the first lines fighting the mutilations. So it's important to adopt a medical certificate, because this medical certificate acknowledges the mutilation of a woman or of a girl. And this is not an easy thing to recognize and to acknowledge. So we have to improve the training of the experts who draft and prepare any such medical statements and certificates or reports. So the situation the situation in France is not easy. It is not easy to make it mandatory. There are many professionals hiding behind the professional secrecy. I would like to insist on two very important evolutions with the so-called multidisciplinary centers, because these multidisciplinary centers adjusted to all types of evolution of the support phenomenon, the support to be given to women. There are many migrants ending up in France, and in some countries the criminal code is different, and the penalization is different. The problem is a worldwide problem. The practice is ever more medicalized, and so we have to adjust to the new realities, which is what we try and do with our own institute. My name is Frédéric Martz, co-founder of the Women's Safe Institute, which is a multidisciplinary center, the one mentioned by Pierre. All of the centers are very fundamental in the practice of prevention. So as to their own approach, we today host women who have been suffering the violence of mutilation, women that suffer not only mutilation, but many more forms of violence. They suffer from incest, rape, and the problem is very much more complex. The phenomenon is the one of post-trauma and post-traumatic stress. This will be impacting and affecting the entire life of these women. And in most cases, women tend to opt for the surgical reconstruction. And it is true that we see women who have already understood that this option is available, the one of the repairing surgery or reconstructive surgery, because they want to regain their own sexuality. They want to be the owners of their own body. And so we have to adopt the multidisciplinary approach, which entails the activation of a number of operators, even masseurs, because they perform also psychotraumatic and body massage, which is very important. In this case, I think that we have to consider sexuality as well, because apart from a repairing surgery, which is an important solution for these women, we also try and provide these women with a safe space, a place where they can express themselves freely, the so-called talking circles, where women can gather and just speak their minds freely. It is important for them because many of them confess that they had never confessed or talked with anyone else about this mutilation. So it's important to stress that our work was resting upon prevention, protection of children. And these women did then realize that they did not decide it. That was imposed upon them. And so we are now in a position of changing these things. So after the talking circles where people and women get together, they also decided to start protecting their own offspring, their daughters especially. These women are willing to change the traditions, very ancient and old traditions, and they are more than willing to protect and safeguard their own daughters, together with their own husbands. They want to protect the girls. They're running the risk of mutilation.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup pour cette intervention et merci aussi de votre présence.
Thank you for this contribution, for this complementary presence and introduction. I would now like to pass the floor to the next partner of the Before project, Ilaria Boiano, as to the Italian situation. Good morning, many thanks. Thank you for this very incredible opportunity to confront ourselves, to exchange to practices, and as to the situation in our countries. As Honorable Moretti said in the opening speech, we are confronted by young women and young girls who, as a matter of fact, are fully aware of the severity of violations they suffer and that are the consequence of female genital mutilations. An awareness which is now given back to us thanks to the request of getting detailed information as to the legal juridical framework existing in this country and as to the request of being protected on the immediate, an effective request. Now, the anti-violence places and homes that host women fleeing from violence stand as a strategic tool to deal with genital female mutilation in Italy, but also in Europe at large. So starting from this kind of tools, which in our own national plan fights the gender violence and which has been considered to be a strategic place for protection and prevention, that is the shelters of women. This is where we dug into the tools available to us from the legal and juridical point of view. Now, going back to our own set of rules and regulations, which benefits from important tools, beginning with the law that punishes, envisages the punishment of all types of mutilations and also punishes the perpetrators of any such crime with respect to the effectiveness and the implementation of this prevention system. We've noticed that there are some gaps and as a consequence, we drafted new recommendations that are instrumental to overcome the limits of our own legal framework. The first point has got to do with the prosecution and persecution, that is the fighting of the crime. We have no data as to the many legal procedures that were started by the judicial authorities, whilst we can count on the tip of our fingers. There are very few trials that come to an end and that envisage a sentencing of the perpetrator, which is telling us something about the inefficacy of the measures that were adopted and which sees that the mothers are most hard hit by this violence against their own will and which suffer from the mutilations in a family dynamic, which would rather require a more complex intervention, much more in-depth one, which should consider the historical cultural reasons for this practice. Now, as far as the legal aspect and the legal framework, now our decisions are waiting for the classification of the legal proceedings, thus allowing all of the legal operators and lawyers to get to know, and even the civil operators should get to know the attention to be given and that this phenomenon receives from the judicial authorities. And it is important to dig into the dynamics and to understand who are the subjects involved in this practice. Then we also said that the systematic training of the operators, even within the legal framework, is of paramount importance, even within the police system. We also believe that it is of paramount importance to closely collaborate and to have close collaboration between judicial authorities, anti-violence homes and shelters in view of an immediate protection to be given to the mother and the daughter, so as to promote a pathway which will lead them out and away from a systemic violence situation, which is unfortunately systemic within the family and within the household. So this is what should allow us to identify the violent practices against the minor daughters or adolescent daughters. And we know that it is important to see and to know that even the very young adolescents are exposed to this risk during their own adolescence. So let's go back to the point of prevention and protection. And here I would like to stress once again, please remember to stay and stick to the time that was allocated to you. But the crucial aspect is that we have to acknowledge the empowerment of women and adolescents and girls by providing them complete information and appropriate information with respect to the mechanisms of self-help and protection, and also providing them information as to the rights recognized and acknowledged to the people fleeing and trying to find shelter from these kind of practices. The international legal framework should also be implemented with respect to women ending up and coming to our own country, also because we are to implement Article 58 and 59 of the Istanbul Convention and all of the measures envisaged by Chapter 7. So we have to acknowledge in this country and to allow for specific stay permits for those who are at risk, and especially for those young women, second-generation young women, who have seen their permits expired and their families been repatriated to the countries of origin. I would like to go back, and this is what I had to say with respect to this chapter. Thank you, Ilaria. This has got to do with the problem that we dealt with. And now Giulia Scavioni will take the floor. She's in charge of the program Human Rights and Gender Issues. There is no peace without justice. So she will be illustrating the recommendations that at the end of this project were addressed to the European institutions. Please, Giulia, take the floor.
Gianfranco.
Thank you, Gianfranco.
I would like to thank Honorable Moretti and Honorable Herzberger-Fofana for hosting this meeting, which for us represents the final step of this 2-year project, during which we have informed the general audience, we have sensitized women, girls, men, boys, and families. We have trained professionals in the 3 countries involved in the project, which are Italy, France, and Belgium. But during this time, we have also intensely discussed with the government representatives, with the civil society, with experts, and with the professionals from all the sectors involved in FGM, in order to identify what are the main lessons learned and the best practices developed during this long fight against FGM carried out at different degrees all over Europe, and how this information could be useful to develop a set of recommendations to be presented at the European level. With regards to prevention, we have identified some excellent practices in working with the communities, as in Belgium, or in giving education an essential role by including FGM, for example, in curriculum, as happened in France. And France has also developed very effective protocols in terms of protection and assistance to survivors, as explained in the video by Dr. Foldes and Frederick Mars, who I must say have provided an outstanding contribution to this project, also in terms of their capacity to transfer their knowledge and good practices to professionals in other countries. Our work has confirmed the importance of the law that can be relied upon communities, professionals, police, and the courts. And again, in this, French experience is key. But our work has also confirmed the need to combine a strong legal framework with major investments in prevention, research, training, reporting, and information sharing. Data collection has been confirmed to be one of the most challenging and among also the most essential aspects in fighting FGM. The lack of routine statistical analysis or qualitative research and data collection in all involved sectors such as health, asylum or criminal justice is quite common in all European countries. Some good practices have been developed only at the local level as pilot projects. But generally the method of estimation of FGM prevalence is still, I should say, controversial. And particularly there is not a common method of estimation or a common procedure to collect and analyze data, or a common code system to define and classify FGM in Europe. Therefore, what we have at this level does not allow an appropriate monitoring of prevalence or a sufficient evaluation and appraisal of the policies enacted. So what do we ask to the European institutions? We have experienced firsthand that legal and political measures as well as research and advocacy are much more effective if carried out at European level. So to resume, we ask to increase communication and information sharing among member states, also through the creation of national focal points in charge of FGM, to encourage member states to harmonize their legislation on asylum and subsidiary protection, implementing obligation and Article 60 of the Istanbul Convention, to encourage member states to adopt a common approach to obtain a new comparable and disaggregated data and a common terminology, to establish institutional mechanisms for the collection of relevant administrative data at the national level in order to have focused policies and legislative interventions, enhance interconnections among European institutions and between them and WHO, increase resources for research and awareness-raising campaigns at the European level, include, whenever possible and appropriate, a clause to eradicate FGM in EU cooperation negotiations and agreements with the countries concerned by the practice. So we know that in the last 10 years, violence against women and girls, including FGM, has become a priority for EU institutions. So we very much hope that our recommendations could be taken into account in future initiatives, and all the challenges highlighted could be addressed in order to hopefully one day eradicate the practice. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Giulia.
Thank you, Giulia, for this explanation, this global explanation. And now I would like to give the floor to Emanuela Zuccalà, who has been by our side throughout this project with her project and her exhibition that's called Uncut. You have seen a photograph in the preparatory documents for this meeting today, and she will explain to us the details of this. So I would like to give the floor to Emanuela at this point. Please. Good morning. Can you hear me now? I hope so. Well, thank you so much for your kind invitation to take part in this conference. I'm a journalist. I'm a filmmaker. And I came up with this idea for this Uncut project, which is a reporting project on FGM, but especially it is focused on the women who fight against FGM in Africa. And we also have a French chapter in this story that we have produced together with Women Safe and Dr. Foldes. Uncut in several documentaries and reports, it includes all this, and a photo exhibitions that was supported by the Before Project. And Simona Ghizzoni, a photographer, contributed to this with Zona that has produced this. And they tell the story of the long battle of women against this practice in countries such as Somalia, Kenya, and Ethiopia. And this was exhibited a couple of years ago at the European Parliament. Today, I would like to go beyond this and also backtrack in a way. I would like to go back to Africa. It is true that we're talking about Europe, that everything that we're saying about Europe is so important. However, it is in Africa that we find the origin of this issue. As a reporter and filmmaker, I had an experience that calling shocking is a euphemism, and I would like to bring this experience to your attention, this important forum. I'd like to talk about Liberia. Liberia is one of the 5 African countries, the remaining African countries, that does not have a law criminalizing FGMs. It is perfectly legal. And in Liberia, it is not just legal. It is actually supported by the government. I'm telling you this, and soon I will share with you this awful story. I'm saying this because I'm convinced that in an institution such as the European Parliament, I don't know how, because Liberia is a sovereign country. However, it might introduce actions or exert influence in terms of international cooperation and partnerships with the African Union in order to bring the situation to an end in Africa, because it is from Africa that this situation comes to us here in Europe. So we have to look at both fronts, I believe, and we have to fight on both fronts. In Liberia, FGM is legal. It's the initiation right to a secret society that's called Sande, that is made up by women. It might look like a form of folklore. However, the Sande society is deeply rooted in the entire country and exerts a massive political influence, meaning that the leaders of the Sande association or society can also determine the electoral fate of many politicians. And this is why Liberia was never able to introduce a law against FGM. Basically, girls enter this secret society, and to be accepted into the society, they have to be mutilated. They leave regular school. Once they join, the illiteracy rate in Liberia is very high, say amongst girls. Due to this powerful influence of Sande, there has never been a law. Even Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the first woman head of state in Africa, Nobel Peace Prize in 2011, a shining light, a powerful personality, she had to accept a compromise and banish FGM only for a year, shortly before the end of her term. I'm saying all this because Liberia is a sovereign state, but as a reporter and an activist for human rights, I have shot a documentary on this issue. And I'm here for you. I'm available for you. If you would like to watch this, you can contact me through No Peace Without Justice. Because in Liberia, as is the case in every African countries and European countries, as we know, activists are out there, but they need massive support because they're constantly being threatened. Would like to share with you only 2 examples that are perhaps the best known. Phyllis Kimba, a feminist who has been fighting for a long time against FGM, the best known president of a famous association. After her speech at the United Nations, her house in Monrovia was burned down because she dared speak against FGM and against this women's secret society. Maya Zango, a wonderful reporter, she was the first to write about FGM in a country, and I met her. She had to send her daughter to the United States and apply for asylum because she had been threatened. Therefore, I'm sorry if I wanted also to basically get off the rails for a second, but I do not want to just keep the story to myself, which is now being disseminated with this documentary that I've made in festivals. But as you know better than anybody else, advocacy actions are now pursued through the public at large, but through important institutional fora, such as the European Parliament. This is why I wanted to share this story with you that is repeated in Sierra Leone in a quite similar way. And then there are other 3 countries without this law: Somalia, Mali, and Chad. The situation is not as bad as Liberia, but we all know, as you have mentioned earlier, that when there is a law, when the state takes a stance against genital mutilation, the problem is not solved automatically, but at least it's a very important sign and an important starting point. Thank you so much. Thank you, Manuela. Thank you for this extremely interesting description of the current situation. We really can see, we can testify to the major efforts we made in Mali to get a law passed, but these clashed against the resistance of religious authorities, which instead in other countries have contributed instead. So the situation is quite different between one country and another. This is very important to say. This is a difficult situation. I would like to ask you to change the agenda a little bit, because one of our speakers, Simona Lanzoni, who is Deputy President of GREVIO, the group of experts on violence against women of the Council of Europe, needs to leave earlier than expected. So if you agree, I would like to give her the floor. So it would be just a little bit earlier than expected.
Grazie, merci. Désolée, mais aujourd'hui, c'est une journée très importante pour les droits humains et il faut se partager un peu. Mais merci pour les invitations à toutes et tous et à toutes les organisations non gouvernementales qui travaillent si bien sur ces sujets-là. Et je commence à vous dire que vous savez que la Convention est entrée en vigueur en 2014 et malgré son jeune âge, elle guide de nombreux pays, tant ceux qui l'ont ratifiée que les autres, dans la mise en œuvre des mesures visant à prévenir et à combattre les violences à l'encontre des femmes de tous les âges et les violences domestiques. Comme vous savez tous, la Convention d'Istanbul est
As you all know, the Istanbul Convention is the first treaty, the first binding treaty vis-a-vis female genital mutilations that exist in Europe and need to be addressed systematically. The convention requires on the part of member states a strengthening of preventive measures that are addressed to affected communities and to the broader public. The convention implies protection measures and support measures for women and girls who are in danger, and suggests practical solutions for those who have been subjected to this mutilation. The convention also provides for the establishment of support services and legal protection services for women. You have spoken about this. I have listened with great interest to many experiences that you have described. Therefore, in order to ensure the respect of children's rights, member states have to consider that female genital mutilation have to be then punished criminally, under criminal law, with adequate measures for children. And one of the features of this convention is that these measures must be part of an all-encompassing policy that's coordinated. It must be implemented by governments, also relying on the cooperation of NGOs and women's organizations. As you know, there are different forms of female genital mutilation that are different from one community to another. The WHO in 2008 has subdivided these mutilations in 4 categories, and this WHO has inspired the introduction of Article 38 by Council on violence against women has led to the convention in order to criminalize these behaviors. The convention also, at political level, provides for different measures to counter the situation, to protect women's and children's rights. The convention explains how to develop that have as their effect an awful situation. We have to help women who would like to regain control of their sexuality. Since this practice is also found in migrant communities, we need a particularly sensitive approach. We have to insist on the rights of women and girls. That's the winning strategy. In member states, all these provisions are implemented. The convention is a follow-up mechanism. And Grevio is part of this follow-up mechanism with independent groups that work with the communities as well. And as far as the countries participating in this project are concerned, a very interesting project with the involvement of civil society in France, Belgium, and Italy, with the precious support provided by the European Union, I can tell you that the Council of Europe with Grevio, therefore, has already ratified the Istanbul Convention in these countries, and we have also put forward our recommendations. And please, I urge you to read this report. Well, every country has already made huge strides, even before the introduction of the Istanbul Convention and the ratification of the convention itself, in order to cope with this situation. We need to assess risks associated to FGMs. There are many risks that are still prevalent in many countries. So civil society gives us a special kind of support, as you're all doing with your organizations. But then there's another important domain. We always have to involve healthcare workers, physicians and nurses, and we also have to look at asylum applications so that this violence can be brought to the fore for all women of every age. So we have to develop protocols regarding the consequences coming from any form of violence, including a female genital mutilation. Asylum applications should always be guaranteed as the Istanbul Convention lays down, and we have to consider this domain also FGMs. As is the case always in international law, the implementation level of the Istanbul Convention depends upon political will, the responsibility of preventing and protecting, achieving things in every domain, including FGMs. The Istanbul Convention provides member states the opportunity to eliminate the taboo, the silence that surrounds this topic of FGMs. And therefore, this must become part of the practices in every member country. So we would like to appeal to the European Union and European Parliament. We would like to urge member states to ratify this convention and implement it. And therefore, we also urge the organizations of civil society to apply the convention's principles in order to introduce this change. Thank you so much for having given me this opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Maintenant, on reprend notre programme avec la dernière intervention.
Thank you, Simona Lanzoni. Now we will go back to our agenda, and now we will hear from our partners from the Before Project. I would like to give the floor to the President of La Palabra, Kadi Quetta.
Kadi avait quelques problèmes. Elle voulait effectivement décaler.
From La Palabra. Kadi have a few problems. She wanted her speech to be pushed back a little bit. She's not here with us, so I would like to go on with the agenda because I cannot see her. She is not here with us. Kadi.
Kadi, si tu n'es pas là, je...
On with our agenda. Very well. Let us continue and let us move on to waiting for Kadi. Let's move on to the answers coming from our institutions regarding the conclusions of the reaction of institutions in front, when considering the situation of FGMs. We have a contribution, a video contribution from Elena Mozova, and she's the director of the Just from the European Commission for citizenship. And now I would like to show you this video clip, waiting for Kadi Koita.
Let me first thank you very much for organizing this very important event, fighting female genital mutilation in Europe, increasing the impact of policies against female genital mutilation. And let me also thank you for inviting me personally. As you know, President von der Leyen's Commission has put the prevention of violence against women and the protection of victims at the heart of the European Union's equality policy. And as a form of gender-based violence against women, harmful practices targeting women, including female genital mutilation, are an issue of great concern of the European Commission. The Commission tackles female genital mutilation through its internal and external action. The internal action are based on the Commission's communication towards the elimination of female genital mutilation from 25th November of 2013 year. In addition, the European Union Gender Equality Strategy, as adopted earlier this year, provides this very strong policy framework for all measures aimed at combating violence against women in Europe and lays out an ambitious set of actions for this end. The strategy acknowledges that female genital mutilation is a form of gender-based violence and a serious violation of women's and children's rights. To step up our actions against FGM, the Commission aims to propose a recommendation on the prevention of harmful practices later on its mandate, preventive measures, and the importance of education in tackling harmful practices. The recommendation will also cover the need to strengthen public services, capacity building of professionals, and victim-centered access to justice for them. And as you know, so the European Union and all European Union member states have signed the Council of Europe Istanbul Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence. The Istanbul Convention requires its parties to criminalize harmful practices against women, namely FGM, but also forced marriages, forced abortion, and forced sterilization, and so-called honor crimes. Concluding the European Union accession to the Convention remains a key priority of this Commission and its President, Ursula von der Leyen. However, in addition, so we will also propose a legislative initiative on gender-based violence in late 2021. Gender-based violence in all its forms, including FGM, remains underreported and overlooked, both inside and outside of the European Union. As a Commission, we are fully aware of the need to high quality data because they are basis for effective policymaking. As a part of this evidence gathering for this new legislative initiative, we are about to launch an online public consultation on preventing and combating violence against women and domestic violence. And this consultation will be published very soon. Gathering stakeholders' views and experiences on FGM will be a very important part of this consultation. Commission also tackles harmful practices against women through the Right, Equality and Citizenship Programme, offering funding for member states and also civil society-led projects. The latest call for proposal opened in January 2020 with an indicative budget of almost 12.5 million. And we are committed to do so under the new, hopefully soon adopted MFF. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our civil society partners, including Before Project, for your valuable work against FGM. The recommendations of this project gave us a valuable guidance on how to best focus our common goals on preventing FGM, and we will take them into the consideration in our future work on ending FGM. To conclude, there are still many challenges ahead, since harmful practices, and particularly FGM, affects freedom and safety of the many women and girls that continue to be still affected even in Europe. And therefore, the European Commission encourages all of us to take joint action for a Europe free of violence against women. And we would like to work together with our civil society partners and also such important stakeholders like the European Parliament to achieve our shared vision on gender equal Europe. I wish you have a very good discussion today and looking forward to be there with you one day, hopefully in person. Thank you very much.
Merci, merci beaucoup. Je pense que même si elle n'était pas présente, je pense qu'elle nous a envoyé un très bon message et nous remercions beaucoup Madame Rosa. Maintenant, la parole à Maruza Gordmar, chef des opérations de l'AIG, qui est l'Institut européen pour l'égalité de genre. Vous avez la parole. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much and good morning to everybody. First, I would like the Institute for Gender Equality to know Peace Without Justice and its partners for a successful implementation of Before Project. This event comes very timely during the 16 days of activism against violence against women, and these days end just today with the International Human Rights Day. However, our days of fighting against violence against women never end. It is also very important this virtual event is supported by the members of the European Parliament and the European Commission. It definitely proves the political engagement to end these harmful practices. We are here together because we recognize that all forms of violence against women and girls, including female genital mutilation, are one of the most severe violations of human rights of women and girls, and that we need further action to eradicate this violence. As we know, estimating risk of FGM is a complex and challenging issue due to intimate nature of the procedure, changing trends in migration flow, and lack of easily accessible data on the practice. European Institute for Gender Equality has done its first study on FGM in European Union in 2012. And since then, FGM has been one of the main GBV research areas at the Institute. Results from your study and policy recommendations you propose to the EU and its member states are very relevant and further support the recommendations which were prepared by EIGE already a few years ago. As you might know, EIGE's 2018 report on FGM specifically analyzes situation also in Belgium, Italy, and France, in addition to Malta, Spain, and Cyprus. I was asked for today to reflect on recommendations you propose and on the way forward to eradicate FGM. So I would like to focus on three particular aspects: on data collection, on prosecution, data on prosecution and national legislation, and thirdly, on asylum policies. On data collection. So ending the practice of FGM is a priority of the European Union, both for fulfilling international and European legal obligations and in contributing to its overall goal to end violence against women as a precondition to achieve gender equality in European societies. European Institute for Gender Equality's ongoing research into FGM prevalence thus aims at supporting the European institutions and all EU member states in providing more accurate, qualitative and quantitative information on FGM and its risks among girls in order to better combat this phenomenon. You propose also several recommendations on the improved data collection and uniform definitions, and I cannot agree more. EGE cannot agree more. Regular comparable data collection is critical for evidence-based and targeting actions to ultimately end this practice in both countries of origin and countries of destinations. EGE's estimation of girls at risk of FGM includes both girls of the second generation and, where relevant, also third generation. On prosecution and data on prosecution and national legislation, data collection on criminal cases and law implementation is crucial to monitor the situation. You emphasize in your report the need of prosecution and training of the personnel. And EGE's research also highlights the need to strengthen the prosecution of FGM. Unfortunately, very few cases have been lodged so far. And prosecution of those responsible for their crimes, even when committed abroad, will further discourage the practice from happening to young girls. In the majority of member states, the principle of extraterritoriality is applied in the criminal law, meaning that it's possible for member states to prosecute individuals for crimes committed abroad. There are only few member states which do not apply this principle in the EU. These are Bulgaria and Czechia. Across all EU member states, FGM is criminalized through either criminal law or the penal code, and in most countries, so in 21 member states, the criminal law makes explicit references to FGM or mutilation in their legislation. Prevalence, risk estimations, or any other data on female genital mutilation remain affected by many uncertainties, and this is why data need to be interpreted very in order to avoid the misuse of data and also the stigmatizations of the communities affected. Few words on the asylum. One of your recommendations is to encourage member states to harmonize their legislation on asylum and subsidiary protection, including on the procedure for family reunification and on the conditions for assessing the risk of FGM and violence against women. These are obligations under the Istanbul Convention as well. I would like to add that systematic identification of vulnerable asylum seekers is therefore needed, as our research also shows that girls are at risk in many EU member states. We should thus ensure that common European asylum system and national asylum systems are gender sensitive. We know that joint efforts, targeted policies, and strong commitment can combat this phenomenon. To conclude, EGE's work encourages joint efforts that engage communities, policymakers, and civil society in understanding the scope of the problem and in ensuring effective prevention strategies and awareness-raising campaigns. EGE's study also reveals that communities are starting to turn away from the practice if awareness-raising campaigns are at place, and when the knowledge of the health risks for women increases. So, however, there are still generational differences in attitudes towards this practice. As it's been highlighted before also by my previous speakers, in order for measures to eradicate FGM and the measures to eradicate FGM to be successful, it's very important that when the policies are drafted, that FGM affected communities are involved in these processes, especially men who also speak out against this practice. I would like to reiterate that the European Institute for Gender Equality is committed, together with the European Commission, to continue to collect evidence-based information and protect girls at risk from this severe form of gender-based violence. On 6th February next year, on the day of zero tolerance for female genital mutilation, EIGE will launch the estimation of girls at risk of FGM in additional 4 member states, in Denmark, Austria, Luxembourg, and Spain. This will be in addition to 9 member states where we have already assessed the estimation, and the full new report will be available in early summer next year. So you can count on our data for your future work as well. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you to you. Thank you for this intervention. Now, I think we have the connection with Kadi Koita, President of La Palabre. I try to give her the floor. Kadi, tu as la parole si tu peux te connecter. Je crois qu'il y a un petit problème. On va faire un essai à nouveau. Non. Toujours pas. Mais on m'a dit que la chose était en train de se régler. Et donc, je l'espère en tout cas. Non? Bon. Donc, avec cette dernière intervention, nous avons...
After these 2 contributions, we can move on to the reply on the part of the institutions. We have listened to the Commission, to the Council with great attention, the institutions for gender equality. And now let's go back to the home that is hosting us virtually, let's say. Normally, we would meet in person. Well, thanks to the Honorable Moretti and her colleague at the European Parliament. Well, we cannot be there physically, but we are together virtually. And we're following very closely the reply on the part of European institutions, not the European Parliament. European Parliament, as you know, is the champion of human rights. It is the champion of the right of the human person, with all its manifold stances, and plays an important role. It's a driving force, I would say, in this framework. Now, the reply on the part of the European Parliament and also the boost that the Parliament can give to this battle is very important. This is why we will be listening very carefully to the contributions from the members of Parliament, and to introduce this panel participating in our meeting. I would like to give the floor to Madame Pierrette Herzberger-Fofana, so that she can introduce this debate. Pierrette, are you there?
Est-ce qu'elle est connectée?
No, she's not there.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello?
Peut-être en attendant que Madame...
While we wait for Pierrette to join us again, I would like to give the floor another member of the European Parliament, the Honorable Francis Fitzgerald. And I would like to give you the floor. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'll do the usual. Can you hear me and see me okay?
Yes, yes.
Good. Good. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for hosting this important conference. I'm delighted that we are hosting it from the European Parliament with my colleagues Alessandra and Pierrette and other MEPs, including Maria Neukel, who works, we work together on the FAM committee, who are obviously feel very strongly about this issue and are happy to support your work. delighted that we're sharing such quality information here. And I really believe that from the institutional point of view, the response that you've heard from Irina and also from Marusa gives you an indication of the developing institutional response to this issue. What I would say is that we need to accelerate it, because there is a huge urgency to this. Because every day that we delay, some woman, some young girl is suffering. So I believe what we have to do is get a greater presence right across our member states, in our parliament, in our institutions on this issue. We have to elevate it higher up the priority action. And that's what we're talking about here today, from the parliament, from the institutions, from member states. I'm delighted there's a woman called Ifra Ahmed, an Irish citizen who's done incredible work in Ireland, speaking to you later, and who has produced a film called The Girl from Mogadishu. I would recommend it to everybody. It premiered in Edinburgh, and that gives an incredible sense of a personal journey and the institutional issues. And of course, that's what we are up against. We're up against so many factors. How do you, if you like, politicize this? I want to say to you that you have very strong partners here in the European Parliament. And with the development of the intergroup, which Pierrette will talk to you about later on, this is yet another way of working together. I want to say that, first of all, the work that has been done by the NGOs is critical. Before I went into politics, I was a social worker. I was chair of the National Women's Council of Ireland. We worked on this. Then I went into politics for 20 years and I was Minister for Justice, and I had other ministries. And what I know is that it is about working together. It's about building bridges and partnerships. And the work that you have talked about this morning, the protection, the prevention, the prosecution, and the prevalence. In each of these areas, we have work to do. Let's start with the prevention. This is part of a greater equality journey where we absolutely make it clear that violence against women is a crime, and FGM is violence against women, and it's a crime. Now, it's a very obvious thing to say, but you know, there's a lot of people in Europe who are absolutely amazed when you say that FGM could be prevalent, could exist in Europe. And that shows the scale of the work that we have to do in the Parliament and elsewhere in terms of awareness raising. So I think the recommendations on awareness raising, working with embassies, working with member states, working with NGOs, this is incredibly important, and we need funding from across the EU, from member states. We need it in national and European strategies to demand funding to do the kind of awareness raising that we need. Of course, the Istanbul Convention has been mentioned. We are doing everything we possibly can in the Parliament, but there is resistance to make sure that everybody accedes to it. There is resistance from quite a new number of member states, and they have to be called out on it. They say that the Istanbul Convention is a Trojan horse for LGBTQI rights, which they don't want to see introduced. And they put out falsehoods about the Istanbul Convention. So we may end up in the Parliament and in the Commission and institution having to take other routes, as well as trying to continue to get it accession for all member states. We may, you know, need to extend what is a crime, a Eurocrime in the treaties. We may have to look at other routes to do this. So that's very important as well. So that's something we will continue to work on. What we have done in the Parliament is we've had a very important resolution passed on FGM, which got huge support. Again, that's about awareness raising. And that has been very important, because what we know, what does Europe do very well? Okay, we have to respect national competencies, but what Europe does very well is it gathers data, disaggregated data across the member states. And IGE plays a huge role in this. They give a fantastic service. And I think we have to make sure we have data from all of the member states and that we share best practice. That's the other thing Europe is extremely good at, building a best practice network. As you recommend, there has to be a focal point in every member state, like we've done with other issues like trafficking. You need a focal point in every member state. Let's agree what that focal point should be. Let's develop it in each member state. then develop the really strong best practice networks. It's happening anyway through NGOs like those who have done the work this morning. So I think there is a lot we can do on this. That joint resolution was an extremely good start. Continue to work on the Istanbul Convention, working for support internally and externally. One of the first things I did when I was elected, I sit on the Committee on Development. I met with the End FGM network, and they made the case to me that when it comes to fighting FGM globally, the EU can be more strategic and more effective in considering the interaction between the diaspora of external countries living in the EU and considering first and second generation migrants. It's very disturbing to hear that first and second generation migrants in the EU, young women, are still being subject to this practice. So we believe that funding that diaspora within Europe to do work in their country of origin is very important, and that we can do something to facilitate this work and the ownership of this issue from different communities. And the EU must be more flexible in its programming and funding. And we have to look at the synergies between internal and external funding to tackle this problem and to utilize the resources we already have. And I'm hoping that when the final trilogue comes out between the Citizens, Equality, Rights and Values Programme, we'll see this recommended in the NDC programme, and that we'll have a positive outcome. So look, I believe that we have to do more. The stories are still very disturbing. We have to get across the urgency. We can do this in the FAM committee. We can do it in the Parliament by own opinions, by making sure that it is understood. We need more male leadership on this. We need male champions. In Nigeria at the conference there last year, I saw some very good examples of male champions on FGM. And I think male leaders across the EU need to get real about this and realize what is happening to women in Europe. And we have to make demands, and coordinated demands across Europe are the best way to go forward. We know it's about bridge building, and well done to this conference, because this is about bridge building, sharing data and agreeing priorities. And if we come out of this conference today with a list of priorities for implementation across the member states, based on the research you have done, I think it will be a good day's work and a good morning's work. So well done to everyone. I look forward to cooperating with you, as do all of the women interested in this and men in the European Parliament. And we can do more, but let's identify exactly a priority order to get the action so that we can, it's legislative as well, by the way. I know from being in justice, but I actually believe that the awareness raising, information sharing, and the cultural shift is probably one of the most important parts of this. We've had one case prosecuted here in Ireland, but the parents were the ones, who were prosecuted, and the parents then, the sanction was on the parents. And there are different views about that, about what sanctions, where the sanctions should be. We need to get clarity on that as well. Thanks ever so much. It's a pleasure to be part of this.
Thank you to you. Thank you to you. We need this passion that you have put in your intervention, and I think that is the best message that to convey to our also to these the participants to this meeting. We are more than 60 listening this debate. Now the floor. I underline that Mrs. Fitzgerald is member of the EPP. Now I give the floor to Madame Pierrette Herzberger-Fofana, membre du groupe de Verts au Parlement européen. La parole est à vous.
Voilà.
Vous m'entendez là?
Oui, voilà. Merci bien de me redonner la parole. Nous avions eu un problème technique. Alors, je vais être
Many thanks for passing me the floor. We had a technical problem, but I will be very short indeed, because what I would like to announce is the fact that the European Parliament, other deputies and members of the Parliament, independent of their own political belonging, join forces, and we will set up a group, which is a group which will fight FGMs. the pandemic and COVID-19 unfortunately stalled us in this work. I had already contacted my colleagues in the month of February and March, and then the quarantine, the lockdown, and as we all know and understand, the working has been very difficult. I've been very, very happy of the positive acceptance I received and the welcome I received from my colleagues. All of the colleagues were very much willing to set up the group. So I believe that together we will conduct some excellent work. There are a number of women organizations fighting FGM that have contacted us, and I'm thinking also the ones existing and located in Germany. And I became the leader of a group that will be starting to work starting from the month of February. This was a project. Our project was funded by the European Union, and that was under the aegis of Les Gradis à Vous. This project will be men standing up for gender equality. And the purpose is the one of ending FGM. And I believe that it is very interesting to know that Mrs. Gladys was really doing something for Germany, and the situation is totally different as opposed to the one that we have in Germany, in France, and in Italy. The situation, as I said, is totally different. And she published a letter stressing how important it is to inform the communities because the Italian communities and German communities are not well informed, but this information-oriented work needs to be carried out. Many women that have suffered the cutting and the circumcision don't understand German. They do not have access to the German language, and I was then very happy knowing that the letter was written and that was addressing the communities. And that community in particular. But if we have the possibility, and hopefully before the end of the year, that is before the end of 2021, we will have already been in a position of setting up this project. This is a project which is going to be very much active, whatever our political sympathies are. So I will be strengthening my contacts so that starting from the month of February, when we will hold the conference, the first conference, we will make it possible to all of you to take part in the conference. You will be all invited, as a matter of fact. And that is going to be allowing us to show that within the European Union, there is a true will of accelerating and willingness of accelerating the process of eradication of FGM in Europe. So not only from the cultural point of view, but also we will be oriented to prevention activities, because prevention is a paramount activity, a crucial one. We will have to try and involve and make physicians committed, not to denounce or file, but rather to report cases that may occur on the German territory, in the heart of Europe, in other words. And quite obviously, if there are no reports and no signaling, it is going to be difficult to work in that sense. So the data collection will have to go on, and it will go on, as I hope, thanks to my colleagues coming from different European countries. France already accepted to be part of the project. And I believe that also Eastern Europe colleagues are very important, and we were missing lots of data with that respect. Countries such as Croatia, Hungary will be obviously in a position of sharing their own data so as to allow us to understand the actual numbers of women involved, the number of women that are suffering any such mutilations and cuts, and who have joined in the war against and the fight against this kind of horrible practices. So I guess that all of us together, that we all joined in the eradication of the elimination of FGM, and that we have now reached a zero tolerance point, a zero tolerance day, and maybe we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So many thanks to all of you, to the participants, to the organizers who gave me the opportunity to speak about this product and to share with you my information. This is a project launched within the European Union. Then also your project is also to be admired, and we will definitely adopt your own recommendations. And starting from your own recommendation, we will be leading forward sort of a very deep work within the European Union. So many thanks for giving me the floor with this respect. A theme which I am very fond of. Thank you very much for this kind of information, for your contribution, and I do hope that the participants and many more will be in a position of participating to any such initiatives so that mutilations will be part of the agenda of a number of projects. And now I would like to pass the floor to Pina Picerno, the S&D group. You have the floor. Many thanks, Gianfranco. Many thanks to the organizer, my colleague, friend, and partner of many fights and battles. She's always been very much sensitive with respect to the themes having to do with women's rights and the many fights for the integrity and health of women. I participate willingly to this meeting today because I believe, and I thank you for having promoted it, I believe that the FGM stands as a true, horrible, barbaric kind of practice. They have to do with violence. They are a true attack against women, against the body integrity of these women, their own identity. And this is even more severe than a bruise and of any other violent action against a woman, because the FGM practices affect women in their own intimacy while remaining invisible to the eyes of other people, the great majority of people, thus leaving women in a complete solitude, absolute, terrible, horrifying solitude and loneliness. The estimates that were credited and that were studied, tragically studied on a yearly basis, tell us how in the world there are more than 140 million women that have been mutilated. And the European data are very worrying. It's very worrying because we are considering 500,000 women only in Europe that have been mutilated. And this probably is a piece of data that is absolutely not corresponding to reality. It's only approaching reality. It's difficult to have the real figures, the real numbers, because this is a hidden practice. This is hidden violence, which is kept under silence and which is hidden. So it is hard to get a reliable estimate of the spread of this true barbaric attitude and procedure. This is very typical of a medieval culture, a retrograde culture, which considers women as objects, objects that are available and disposable. And with this respect, I want to insist on the fact that this is a phenomenon which is broadly, tacitly accepted. This has got to do with the households, with the families, because that's where the idea of this terrible violence originates, in Egypt, in Somalia, in Sudan. This is affecting more than 90% of women, notwithstanding the fact that it has been considered as a criminal practice, an illegal practice. In Egypt, this is absolutely a crime. It's held as a crime. It's not legal. And we know the incredible, unfortunately, we know the incredible rise of cases, notwithstanding all this. And we well know that this is not only a problem which is touching upon religion alone. This is a practice which has to be framed into a more global situation, and many radical Islamic elements unfortunately tend to make broad use and wide use of this invasive mutilating practice. I'm thinking of what's happening right now in Egypt, where the phenomenon is so widespread. So I believe that the kind of activity and work that we will have to carry out, it's going to be very important. And this conference is only a piece of this work. It's only a tessera in the huge puzzle that has to be put together. And the many frameworks where we have to become active are many. We have to compare, to have a comparison of data. We have to have comparable data so as to understand exactly what's going on. We have to allow for a solid platform and basis which will allow us to draft viable prevention practices and policies to fight and to combat this violent practice. Then we also have to improve the assistance provided to victims. We have to help member states. We have to set up assistance and support centers. We have to work on the sensitization of the many health professionals that are involved. We have to sustain and support member states so as to allow them to fight in an effective way and condemn the FGM reality. And the at-risk women have to be protected, because we well know that this is very similar to domestic violence, which, and we know was the object of a clinical picture. Legal framework is the one of the walls of a household. So even with respect to FGM, we have to make it possible for these women coming from very at-risk and deeply at-risk contexts that will be effectively protected, safeguarded, and their rights granted. We have to allow and grant for an adequate legislative framework with respect to the asylum seekers and the protection of the potential victims, and not only the true victims, but also the potential ones. Let me also stress another element which is worrying, and this has got to do with what is happening in Europe, because we know in Europe that something exists with this respect. There are pieces of news provided by some NGOs where we know of cases of re-infibulation or a second infibulation, which is taking place in Europe, not elsewhere. So you well understand that now we are treading upon a ground that has to be absolutely rejected. Because if this is taking place in a hospital and it's deeply medicalized, then it means that it's doctors who perform this procedure after delivery, which is absolutely unacceptable. And sometimes it's the woman herself who presents a request, or her family, but this has to be prohibited and criminalized by our own laws, and it has to be denied. It cannot be tolerated. It has to be rejected. It cannot be accepted in the name of assumed cultural reasons or tolerance. It has to be rejected because this is a tribal, barbaric practice to be absolutely fought and denied. I'm thinking of third country relations, and these relations will have to be very important, but there is an incredible work which is placed upon our shoulders, which is the one we have to carry out in Europe, so as to fight this practice. Women, unfortunately, are subject to this terrible, horrible violence also in Europe, as we have heard. So the kind of work we have to still conduct and bring forward is highly committing. It's not trivial. It's not to be given for granted. We need to set up an intergroup. And if that were to be done, I make myself immediately available, because it is necessary to conduct teamwork. Cross-sectional activities need to be activated, activities and measures to be adopted which go well past the laws. Because on the one side, we don't want to have a civilization, and on the other, some barbarian situations. So we will have to try and do the best we can so as to collaborate, so as to save these women, and avoid that this practice is going to be widespread even in Europe. A lot has already been done. We've heard that now we have some effective tools within Europe to protect these women. but a lot still is to be done. We have to still accomplish huge steps forward, too many steps forward. And I would like to say, and Gianfranco knows well this, and Alessandra knows this well, we will not be happy until when there is going to be a woman, even a single woman, who is forced to undergo such atrocities, such terrible practices. We will be working with this respect, and with this respect, I also make myself available, 100% available, to do all we can and to go on along this pathway. Many thanks, Pina. Many thanks. And now we have the possibility of hearing the president of Palabra, Kadi Koita. So if you are with us, Kadi, I hope that we will be in a position to hear your words. Good morning. I hope that you all can hear me. Oh, well, thank you. Good morning. I apologize for the many problems I incurred to set up this connection. And I am using my mobile telephone to participate, and I'm not going to touch anything else because I am at risk of losing this connection, so you won't see me. Good morning anyway. Good morning to all of the participants, and many thanks. Many thanks to all of you, to all of those who already took the floor with respect to this many topics. This is a subject and a topic which is obviously attracting the attention of NGOs. It is true that many things have been done, and there have been many more things that need to be done. There are many more things that need to be done. With the Palabra, we are trying to work directly with people, affected people, and with respect to violences, that's the theme we deal with in general. And this kind of mutilation is a pivotal topic. So we work a lot with respect to mutilations, with the forceful marriages of minors and of children. We thought that this was past and done with the phenomenon, but unfortunately we know that this is something that still exists. And we've heard from some of them that they were forced to be undergoing mutilation before getting married. So we believe that we are going to work especially with young women, with groups of women, groups of mothers, of grandmothers, because we realized that the grandmothers did not give up and have not abandoned any such practices, and they also try and participate, and they try and influence the mind of the younger ones. Obviously, we have to work to try and change this. Many things have already been done. Many laws have been passed, conventions were signed, resolutions were approved and implemented, but the problem has got to do with their enforcement, their implementation in concrete terms. And it is very difficult, I believe, in the absence of a strong willingness to do so. And we did notice when working on the ground that we can work and it is possible to try and work with these women and collaborate with them. We hear from them that there are many things that need to be tackled, with education being the very first and foremost one. Now, when we work with these women, we understand and we realize that how deeply affected they are, affected in their mind, in their spirit, and in their bodies. So we have to work and adopt a psychological approach with them. And we are not only working in and towards prevention, but I think that this is something more global, much more global work. And in the year 2019, while working, I did meet with many women in our own project. I then realized that what we had in the 90s was already and still experienced still today. In Belgium, I also met with a number of professionals with whom I did exchange views and did start discussing and debating. But unfortunately, we always clash against the legal cultural problem, the juridical problem, the many aspects that are intermingled. There is this cultural relativism problem. Sometimes, as I said, it's a silenced one, it's hidden. And we realize how embarrassed these women are whenever they have to deal with any such topics. They don't know whether they have to talk about culture and traditions, or they have to report the case to the police authorities. In our work with young women, we want to prepare them to save themselves, to save their own young sisters or any other member of the enlarged and extended family. And we want to make them understand that it is important for them to go on studying as long as possible. They should attain the highest level of education. Today, getting married is a choice, and if they do not have a diploma or if they don't have a good job, they will be forced to accept organized marriages where all of these traditional practices will be deeply affecting them because they will be perpetrated. Now, with respect to asylum rights, we have been meeting with women that got asylum granted, others that haven't, and I would like to say that this is very difficult. It's a very difficult situation, but not only there are many European countries that adopt the asylum rights on the basis of the number and the prevalence of mutilations. Now, for women, it's very hard and very difficult to obtain the asylum right and have it granted. Some of them obtain it on the basis of given conditions and others on the basis of different conditions. But anyway, this is a very difficult situation. So the policymakers should reconsider and review asylum-seeking rights and asylum rights in general, because sometimes the reality is different from what it appears to be. Our policymakers should be more committed and deeply and very much committed on the long term, in their work with these women. I'm trying to summarize and to recap a little bit, but I hope that the many conventions, the many resolutions, and we know that there are a lot of them, they are well done and they do exist, but their implementation and enforcement is extremely difficult because they entail huge efforts to make the minds change and to change the mindset. The point is not only affecting us as African women, but I would like to say that this is also involving Europeans and the political European environments. For example, there is an entire work that needs to be carried out and which entails the change in the mindset and the change in behaviors. This is a matter of political willingness and political will. Now, with this respect, we have to acknowledge the fact that this is an issue not only here, but everywhere in the world. In the drawers of the policy makers and of the politicians, there are so many things. The important thing would be the one of implementing and enforcing in somewhat a better way any such policies, fighting and criminalizing mutilations. Many people are afraid of losing their jobs because of a political opinion. So we should acquire the useful tools, the useful means that allow the organization to work with these women. We know that it's been for more than 30 years that I have been involved on the ground trying to deal with these issues, but still a lot needs to be done. And I've seen many of us who at a given point forgot all about this problem, and now they are rethinking the entire issue. They are starting to say, what am I to do so as to make this turn into a symbol? I believe that in the field of prevention, in the field of information, still a lot has to be done. We need commitment, deep commitment to make progress along this path, to make progress in the field of information, to make progress with the populations, the local populations that are affected especially. And I would like to say that even from the medical health point of view, in some countries, there are some professional health operators that perform mutilations for money. Means that policymakers are pretending not to see there is too much flexibility granted, and the policies that have been adopted are not stringent. Unfortunately, this year, because of COVID, I did ask many women, and we know that because of the COVID pandemic, many of the women did not leave. And we don't know what happened to the girls. There is no control at national level. And so this is where I will stop. And I would just like to simply say that La Palabre tries to work both here and there being local communities, where we have shelter centers, we have homes hosting shelter homes hosting these girls that have been mutilated and are running away from their countries. We will have to build bridges. We will have to build bridges between here and there. And I believe that our eyes now are open thanks to efforts of different programs. And this is what will allow us to make progress. Many thanks to all of you. And I apologize for being lengthy, but we are not tired of talking about any such topics. There have been a number of problems, as we've heard, even technical problems. We've seen that. And now, before passing the floor to the next speaker, I would like to say that Pierrette Herzberger-Fofana asked me to talk about the wonderful commitment of a colleague of her, Professor Toba Levine, who in Germany in 1998 did set up a thing that was known as Forward Germany. And ever since then, this is an organization that has been carrying out an incredible work in Germany. This is one of the most important organizations of this kind existing in Germany. They also publish many books, one of which is the book of Pierre Foldès that we've heard at the beginning of this meeting. So just let me say this. And now let me pass the floor to Infra Ahmet, an activist and founder of United, quindi per l'eliminazione della mutilazione dei genitali femminili. Questa è una storia di grande ispirazione che ha ispirato anche la storia di una ragazza di Mogadishu. A te il microfono, Ahmed.
Hi, good afternoon.
Salve a tutti, buon pomeriggio potrei dire.
Hi, thank you so much inviting me, and I see my Member of Parliament, Francis Charlie. Hi, everyone. And I see it's good to see our politician on board. It's great that everyone here is speaking about one issue that everybody close to their heart. And what we want is to make a difference for young girls who are born and raised in this beautiful side of the world. And today I'm so glad that we are all here talking about the same issue we've been talking over and over again, and to celebrate also International Human Rights Day. So as we all know that Ireland has legislated on FGM in Ireland and have first FGM prosecution in Ireland, and Ireland is very committed for the protection of our young girls who are born in this country. And also because of the COVID, we cannot do much at the moment, but what we were hoping before the COVID is that to educate community and bring awareness in terms of the legislation of FGM in Ireland. But that doesn't happen because of COVID. But we are hoping again to bring our politicians on board our Minister of Health, and also the community that where FGM is practiced. FGM is not only island issue, but is also global issue and European issues. As we all know that there are many young girls who are born in Europe, who are citizens, who are your neighbors, who are the girl who's going to school, your own daughters. And those are the girls we have to protect from this horrible practice. And that is why we are all here, because we want a politician like you, member of parliament, to listen to what we are saying, to actually take that on their own hand and lobby it within their own other member of parliament, because we need Europe to protect the girls. We need you guys to actually stand with us and say, we are talking about a girl country like Somalia, where FGM is practiced 98%. And we are talking about girls that have been told in Europe when her mother seeks asylum or become a refugee, that you have a right to leave this country and you are protected by our law. But it looks like sometimes we are failing those young girls who are born in Europe, who are raised in Europe. So not to say much, but I am so glad that I can have my input on my voice into it and say this. Europe, we need you. We need you here in Europe. We need you in Africa. We need you in everywhere where our girls, our rights are violated and subjected on this horrible practice of female genital mutilation. Without you, we cannot change anything, because you are the lawmakers. You are the people who are making decisions for us. You are the people who are telling you leaders what needs to be done. We are debating on you. We are relying on you. We want that Europe to have a one voice where girls, whether she's asylum, whether she was born, whether she just arrived this Europe, anywhere, need to be protected. The protection is in your hand. As people like me, who are the activists, who are the campaigners, we can only raise awareness. We are not the lawmaker like you. We are not the people who can make a decision, but you are. And that is why you are here today, and you will make a difference. And also, our member of parliament, I want you to take the lead in Ireland. We know that one girl is a many girls. We actually have first prescription in Ireland on female genital mutilation. I don't want to see again families separate their own child. I don't want to see family cutting their daughters who born in Ireland and raised in Ireland. I want to see our member of parliament raising their voices and saying that we should protect the girls who are born in Ireland. I know COVID has stopped us to do more, but I don't want our politician, our Minister of Health, our leaders, just to forget about this issue, which is close to our heart. Not only that, but we all know FGM is a killer. So you are here to protect girls, we are here to protect girls. I don't want COVID to stop us or disconnected us and say, we can't do more because there is a bigger issue. FGM is a bigger issue in Europe. We don't want tomorrow where we will shame all our leaders. We want to celebrate. We want to see our leaders doing more. I thank you all so much. And I hope, as today is International Human Rights Day, to make a difference for more girls. I see Peter here, who I met in Berlin many years ago. And I seen all his work in terms of the clinic. And I have also met with a young woman who have flew in UK to come to Berlin on his clinic to have the procedure or the surgery. I salute for you, and I thank you so much for helping those women who want to change their life for better. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much. This is the kind of intervention that was the purpose of this meeting, just to give this message to the politician, to the institution, because really this is a crucial issue at the end of the day, and that's why we have organized this meeting precisely the day of the International Human Rights Day. Thank you. Now the floor goes to Ms. Ala Elidir, Head of Department about Social Norm and Armed Practice in National Council for Child Welfare in Sudan. As you know, in Sudan, something important happened recently on the issue of MGF, and we are pleased to give you the floor to explain to us what's happened and what do you think about the situation there. Thank you. Please, you have the floor.
السلام عليكم. سأتحدث بالعربية.
I will be speaking in Arabic.
أنا أحب أن أشكر
I would like to thank No Peace. Would like to thank No Peace Without Justice and to give them our plan to activate the Article 141 for FGM in Sudan. This article was approved in 2020, in July 2020. So Sudan, as you know, suffers from a high level of FGM practices. This leads to so many problems. Today is the Global Human Rights Day.
There is a button for translation in your spectrum. You can have the translation from Arabic to the different language if you choose the right button that in principle is present in your computer. Please.
Otherwise, in English, can you hear me? Can you hear me in English? Can you hear translation in English?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, please.
Yes.
Would you let her?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Start. Okay.
Yeah.
And أيضا الحضور
also
حضور من أعضاء البرلمان.
Presence from the members of the parliament.
سانحة جيدة جدا.
This is very good to present the problems we have in Sudan.
نعم. الآن أنا هأعرض
Now I will present
العرض.
Now I'll present this roadmap. This roadmap for Sudan.
لتفعيل المادة 141.
For the Article 141 enforcement framework.
July 2004. Okay. السودان هو قبل بتوصيات
had accepted the UPR recommendations
FGM
to criminalize FGM
والزواج الأطفال.
CM for minimum age.
برضو هو يعني المادة 141 في
Sudan approved amendments of the criminal law
أيضا عنده
including FGM Article 141.
على استراتيجية قومية.
Also, Sudan had adopted a national strategy
لمنع زواج الطفلات.
To ban the child marriage.
أيضا عندنا بعض المساعدات في المسح.
We also receive grants and for the survey.
Also, an SDG report.
And also we do the FDG report.
Partnership الأول الشراكات كانت قوية جدا بالنسبة للسيفل سوسايتي أو المجتمع المدني.
It was very active.
أيضا لدينا مجموعة عمل قومية.
We have a national
task force
work groups.
Groups yes بتتكلم عن ال FGM والchild.
Talking about on FGM and child marriage.
إذا نظرنا لهذا الدياجرام.
If we look to this diagram,
بنجد الخطة بتاعتنا بادية.
We'll find our action plan.
إلى شهر 12 ولكن حصل
It extends to December.
في جولاي 2000
It's for 2021 January 2021.
وأصبح إنه دي
And it has been
priority يعني
It has the priority. انقطع النت من عندها.
So apparently she lost connection. Yeah, she lost connection. We can see her image is freezing, so she lost connection. She's disconnected. Can you hear me? Anyone can hear me? Anyone can hear me?
C'è un problema di audio, penso, con il collegamento.
Anyone can hear me?
I think we have problems connecting with Sudan. I do not know whether Stefano Marrella is online listening to us. Stefano? No, her connection is gone. Well, unfortunately,
So we lost connection.
Let's see
so,
whether we can restore her connection. Well, what she was saying was very interesting. What you were saying also, Madame Elidir, was very interesting. In Sudan, we see this mobilization regarding the law against FGM, and this is an important example. Unfortunately, other countries are lagging behind. There is no law as yet to ban female genital mutilations. Pierre wanted to add something, and I would like to give him the floor. Can you hear me? First of all, I would like to thank wholeheartedly all the partners who were involved in this initiative today, because this is a very important struggle indeed. And I would like to insist on two aspects that we have not mentioned. First of all, these debates are followed in countries where these practices are still prevalent, and this is no mean feat. Changes in migration policies, the way in which we take care of victims of this has repercussions on the field. There are also changes in the practices. The medicalization of this practice, this is a new form of mutilation that gives rise to huge problems. Since we are the ones who see these women, we operate on them, we are experts in this domain, we have the duty to train and educate all partners. These new forms of mutilation give rise to massive problems. We should not just be happy with our achievements. We have to adjust to these new challenges that we must face on the field. A second comment, and I would like now to then address my words to the members of parliament. In our recommendations, we have underlined the fact that there are bilateral cooperation policies with all these countries. And in these countries, many ask for help. Many people ask for help, and rightly so. There's a huge program for the rehabilitation of gynecology wards and the renovation of these gynecology. We have to make sure that our debates on mutilations and on equality, gender equality, well, these subject matters indeed must be in levers for action. And I would like, this is something that should be written really black ink on white paper. We should not just talk about these things amongst ourselves. It's like preaching to the choir. We have to extend instead this debate to the MPs also who are involved in bilateral policies. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Pierre. And now we have come to the end of this debate that I believe has been extremely useful. Before giving the floor to Alessandra Moretti, whom I would like to thank wholeheartedly for having organized with us this gathering and having also taken part in the entire debate and followed from beginning to end. On behalf of No Peace Without Justice, I would like to thank all our speakers and simply tell you all that after Alessandra Moretti's contribution, we will show a video clip that we have received this morning from La Palabre. And I believe that it will be very, very interesting. It will be a fitting end to our debate. Thank you. Alessandra. I'm sorry. Here I am. Wonderful. Well, first of all, allow me to thank wholeheartedly Gianfranco Dell'Alba and the entire No Peace Without Justice team that has been working on this very important project. I would like to thank Pierrette, Pina, Francis for their passionate comments and also knowledgeable comments. And politics today has shown that it can stand united in a really cross-sectoral front in order to fight against this kind of violence, this barbaric practice as it was described, and rightly so. But I would like to thank the other women, such as Ifra and Allah, who are fighting every day, and they set a wonderful example to all women. I believe that the best example should come from them. Indeed, European women, Western women, women politicians belonging to all groups and parties. Well, we will all work together and we will stand by your side, but you're the ones who must set the best example. You have to bear witness to this battle, risking your life, as we have said, risking your life for yourself and also endangering the life of your loved ones and your family members. I was really deeply struck by Laria Boiano's, Luria Schiavone's contribution, but also Emanuela Zupala with her book, with the wonderful work that she's engaged in, art, culture, cinema, food. They can do a lot, and we have to exploit all different forms of art, really, all different art forms in order to engage in this shared battle. I believe that the European Commission, led by Ursula von der Leyen, at long last, we have a woman at the helm of the European Commission, and this can change history. I do believe that having insisted a lot to introduce gender mainstreaming in gender policies and also for gender equality, that must apply to all commissions, to all policies, and to all the norms and regulations that we are going to introduce. This will be absolutely essential. And the central role of education, culture, training, schools, women in all countries in the world must go to school, because education and training, well, this is the most powerful weapon for emancipation. And of course, work, jobs, a salary that makes women free, really, to also flee from situations of violence and harassment and abuse. So thank you indeed. I hope quite soon that we will be free from COVID, that this prevents us from seeing each other, hugging each other, and living personal relations normally. This morning, Gianfranco, I met men and women who are extraordinary, whom I did not know, Ilaria, Manuela, Ala, and many, many others. Thank you, because you have given me the opportunity to open a window over important worlds and people who work in silence with great difficulty, but so knowledgeable and so professional. This is extraordinary and unique. I believe that this is an important step forward, and we have to keep making further steps forward. Thank you all.
Thank you, Alessandra. Thank you very much for this conclusion. Hala is again with us. So even if in principle we have closed our debate, but your intervention will be shortened by the cutting of the connection. And because you have now the floor, if you want to complete your intervention, Hala, you have the floor. You listen to me? Maybe he has the floor, but we don't. Are you listening to me? Hala, I see you, but I don't believe. No problem. Let's proceed with the video of La Palabre, and if the connection is established, she can speak at the end of the video. Please, Stefano, and thank you.
Les mutilations sexuelles féminines sont une violence et une violation flagrante des droits. Totale ou partielle des organes génitaux féminins externes, généralement réalisée par un exciseur ou une exciseuse traditionnelle avec un couteau ou une lame de rasoir, avec ou sans anesthésie. Ces pratiques sont interdites ou restreintes dans la plupart des pays où elles sont pratiquées, mais les législations sont souvent peu appliquées. D'après l'OMS, on estime que plus de 200 millions de jeunes filles et de femmes, toujours en vie, ont été victimes de mutilations sexuelles pratiquées dans le monde, en Asie et en Amérique du Sud. La moitié se concentre en Indonésie, Égypte et Éthiopie. L'Institut pour l'égalité des femmes et des hommes indique qu'en Belgique, un peu plus de 25 000 filles et femmes sont concernées par les mutilations génitales féminines. Mutilations sexuelles féminines sont 4 catégories. Type 1, clitoridectomie, ablation partielle, clitoris externe et ou du capuchon du clitoris. Excision, ablation partielle ou totale du clitoris externe et des petites lèvres avec ou sans ablation des grandes lèvres. Type 3, infibulation ou excision pharaonique. Rétrécissement de l'orifice vaginal avec recouvrement par l'ablation et l'accollement des petites lèvres et ou des grandes lèvres avec ou sans excision du clitoris. Type 4, toutes les autres interventions néfastes au niveau des organes génitaux féminins à des fins non médicales. Par exemple, la perforation ou le déchirement des organes génitaux internes et externes. Ces différents types de mutilations provoquent de graves conséquences médicales qui peuvent entraîner la mort, telles que l'hémorragie, le tétanos, la rétention d'urine, l'ulcération génitale, ainsi que des lésions aux tissus génitaux adjacents. Toutes ces conséquences physiques engendrent de graves troubles psychologiques comme le stress post-traumatique et la dépression. La majeure partie des pays concernés par les mutilations génitales féminines ont adopté une loi l'interdisant. Le 20 décembre 2012, l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies a adopté à l'unanimité la résolution qui établit que les mutilations génitales féminines violent les droits de l'homme et doivent donc être interdites dans le monde entier. Malgré ces résolutions et conventions, encore beaucoup de femmes sont victimes d'excision, notamment lorsqu'elles sont mariées avant leurs 18 ans. Aujourd'hui, dans le monde, vivent environ 650 millions de femmes et de jeunes femmes qui ont été mariées avant l'âge de 18 ans. Combattre les mariages d'enfants, c'est permettre aux filles de bien grandir et surtout d'avoir l'opportunité d'une bonne éducation.
Fighting against child marriage allows young girls to grow up and have a good education.
Voilà. Voilà, avec ce
Well, thank you. With this last message, very powerful message, we have to wrap up. I would like to thank our interpreters who have supported us throughout this gathering. Too bad for Allah's contribution. That's too bad we were not able to restore her connection. I would like to thank you all and to the Honorable Madam Moretti and all the participants and all speakers. See you soon. See you next time. Thank you. Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye-bye, everybody.